Big Buck Registry's Hunter Highlight Series, Dave Thompson and the Thompson Big Boy Buck. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey folks, this is Scott Skiera from Primal Instinct TV on the Outdoor Channel. And you're listening to my favorite podcast on the internet, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Hey guys, it's Tombo Martin with Buck Commander. I'm going to make this short and sweet. If you want to hunt Kentucky, have a great time with great people, fellowship, kill deer, eat great, look up Mark Clifford, Premier Outfitters in Western Kentucky. You will not regret it. I highly recommend it.
Hey everybody, this is Jay Scott from the Big Buck Registry. You know, every now and then we find a buck that has been posted on our wall of fame that sticks out just a little bit more than the rest. And it prompts us to invite that hunter onto the show to tell their story in their own words on the Big Buck Registry Hunter Highlight Series. So this week's guest is Dave Thompson, who's going to tell us all about how he harvested the Thompson Big Boy Buck. Hope you enjoy. Dave Thompson, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Hunter Highlight Series. How are you?
Just fine. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, we're psyched to have you on the show. So this deer you shot from Ohio, we got to hear the story behind it. Before we do, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm an avid hunter. I've been hunting since I was 11 years old. 40 years old now. I shoot competitive archery. I shoot for Matthews and a lot of other companies and stuff sponsor me.
Okay.
So I do a lot of that.
That's cool. So you're hooked up with Matthews. And when you say shoot competitively, what does that mean?
I shoot 3D targets.
Okay, gotcha. And you must be a couple of dogs barking in the background there.
Yes.
That's cool. What are the names of your dogs?
I have a golden retriever named Sydney,
okay,
and a German shepherd named Molly.
Very nice. So you must be a pretty good shot if you've got some sponsors behind you.
I'm typically pretty good.
All right.
I shoot in semi-pro class.
Well, that's good. That sounds like a pretty respectable class. Dave, where are you from?
I'm from Logan, Ohio.
Okay. And then, are you born and raised there?
I was born in New Straitsville, Ohio, which is about 15 miles away.
Gotcha.
When I turned 18, I went to the Marine Corps, and when I got out of the Marine Corps and stuff, I spent a couple years doing construction, and now I'm a correction officer for the state of Ohio.
Very cool. So how long have you been deer hunting?
I've been deer hunting since I was 11, so that would have been born in 73. That would have been 83, 84.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right, so let's get the story behind the deer. In August 2013, you first saw the deer on game camera. Is that correct?
No, actually, it was in 2012.
Okay.
I had a good friend that I knew come to my work as a supervisor, and I haven't seen him or talked to him in a long time, and he was here in Logan, Ohio. So I got to know him, and he actually said, hey, why don't you come hunt? I got some decent deer. And I said, well, if you don't mind, I said, I'll put some cameras out and, see what you got. So I think it was about 2 weeks before season in 2012. I put a couple game cameras out, and we're allowed feeding here in Ohio. So I put some corn out, and within a couple of days, I had, this buck on camera, and I was just amazed, of this deer. So I showed the landowner and my buddy, and he was, he's like, oh, I knew that deer. I've seen him around here a couple of times, and he's been around here for a couple of years. And so one thing led to another, and I actually tried to set up a blind and stuff for the landowner to kill it.
Okay.
I had him coming in really regular, and I said, hey, hunt on this wind, and he'll come in.
Yeah.
The landowner really never got to hunt. So that year, in 2012, I only saw him one time in the stand, and it was the last week of season, which is February of 2013.
Right, gotcha.
And then I put cameras out again April of 2013, and within the first week, I got him coming in. He was actually probably 4 or 5 inches out of his head and already started his brow tines in the first week of April.
Wow.
And I actually do a week-by-week thing on my cameras. I check them every week, and then I put them on my computer in week orders and actually get the growth of them, how they grow. And I've been doing that for a couple of years now.
Interesting.
But then
okay.
I hunted him a couple times early season. He was coming in early in the mornings. When I got into a stand, they would take a picture, and he would walk out of the food plot when I was walking in. We played cat and mouse roughly for a couple weeks, and next thing you know, he disappeared on me. He disappeared roughly for 5.5 weeks. And come to find out, he was 3/4 mile up the road, and another buddy of mine, which is a teacher, was getting pictures of him. And luckily, he shot a smaller buck a couple of days before he started getting pictures of this deer. And then come to find out, the week before I shot him, a buddy of mine called me and said, "Hey, you've been getting pictures of this deer?" And I said, "No, I haven't got pictures at all." And he's like, "Well, I'm sitting here watching it in the park, which is right in town of Logan."
Oh, really?
And
he was in the park?
Yeah, he was in the park with does chasing them. And this was a week before Thanksgiving, and he was still with does.
Wow. Okay.
So he saw him that Tuesday night and that Wednesday night in the same park right in town, and I'm 3/4 mile from there and outside of town. So I knew he was back in the area. Well, I got one picture of him early in the morning, a day later. So I knew he was back in the area. Usually he disappears because there's not much does where I'm at. So he disappears and goes to the does, and then he usually comes back right after rut. Well, he came back, and I had a couple daytime pictures of him on a Monday, which I was going to call in sick to work, and I never. And then when I go to check my cameras, there he is at 10:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm just sick. So it was on Black Friday that night. It was Thursday night. I went shopping with me and my wife, and we done some shopping on Black Friday.
Yep.
The Friday morning, I didn't get a hunt because we was out all night shopping, and him and 2 other nice bucks was together. All 3 of them was together, and they come by my camera through the food plot roughly around 4:50, right around that. So I knew they were in the area. So I went back in there.
That was just to give you a time frame. It was November 29th. That's one of the pictures that you sent, I think, right?
Yes. That was the morning. That was the morning before I killed him. Yes.
Okay.
He come by the camera November 29th, and so I knew he was in the area. So November 29th, that evening, I'm up in the stand, and literally probably within an hour of being in the stand, I hear something. I look down to my right, and here comes a doe. And behind her was 2 large bodies. And I immediately got, my adrenaline started going. I started breathing heavy. So I looked through binoculars, and the first one was him. And the other one was probably 30 yards behind him, and they were standing on the hillside in snow. So, it was just a really pretty scene.
Yeah.
And I never thought it would ever come together because it took like 25-30 minutes before he even got within range before I could shoot him. And when he did, the doe come up to the corn pile, and she was sitting there eating. He kind of come up and was going to come to her, and the third buck come from over the hill. He turned and walked away from me, and I was like, my heart drops. I'm like, this ain't going to happen. And so he immediately run that deer off and turned around and come running back in, and then tried to dog her and push her off the corn. And by that time, I was already full draw and shot him. And I like to hunt high out of a tree stand anyway, because I move around a lot. So I figure the higher I am, the better, less to be seen.
Sure.
So I'm probably roughly 30 feet up in a summit climber, and he's only 18 yards. And so I hit him a little high, and it penetrated the top of his first lung and barely penetrated his second lung. And he ran off, and all I could see was my green knock glowing, and he ran probably 75, 80 yards and stopped, and I'm sitting there watching him, and all of a sudden my green knock disappears. I'm like, okay, either he fell right there or he's just over the hill. so I'm so excited, you know. I'm first one I text is my wife, you know, and I'm literally almost crying. I'm like, you know, I got him. I finally got him, and she's like, well, I'm proud of you. I'm glad of it, you know. So I finally undone my safety harness, got down out of the tree stand, and I'm like, what do I do? I'm like, I'm just going to give him some time. So actually I went to a 3D tournament, indoor 3D money shoot that night, and actually took first place. And so me and the landowner and another buddy of mine, Brad Wood, we all went back out there that night at about 11:30. So I shot him roughly about 4:50, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And so I give him, you know, roughly 6 hours. And I was like, you know, that should be plenty of time. So we went up through there, and we all got flashlights, and we popped up over the hill, and all I could see was my green knock glowing down there. And behind it was, and all I could see was something white behind it. Well, I thought it was his belly. So I go running down there, and I'm screaming, you know, like a little kid. And I get down there, and my heart drops because it's just the arrow laying there, and it was snow on a log.
Gotcha.
So I looked off to the side, and I see a bed where he bedded down right there, and there was just two little spots. And I was like, okay, this one's from his wound, and this one must be coming out of his nose and mouth. And I'm like, well, if it's coming out of his nose and mouth, I must have got at least lung. And so I backed out immediately, and I couldn't hardly sleep that night. And about 6:30 in the morning, I'm getting texts, you know, from another buddy of mine, you know, you out there yet? You out there yet? It's getting daylight. And I said, no. I said, I actually just went to sleep. I said, you know, if he's out there, he's out there. You know, I'll get out there soon enough. And so I finally got up, and about 8 o'clock, I got out to there, and the landowner was still asleep. And so I went out there myself, and didn't have really nobody to go with. So I went out there myself and started tracking him from where I last saw blood.
Yep.
Went across the ravine, and he went up on into this pines. Well, there wasn't much snow in the pines, so I was just finding like a little spot here, a little spot there, and I'm like, okay. So I kind of followed where maybe he would have went, and I found this highway. I mean, it was just like Rub City, and where they just run back and forth.
Sure.
So I started up through there, and I found one little spot of blood, and I looked at it, and it had air bubbles in it, and I'm like, I definitely got lung. So I took a picture and I sent it to my buddy, and he's like, you know, if you got lung, you know, he should be not far. So I walked on up maybe 15 yards, and I'm sitting in two beds full of blood, and I'm like, okay, where's he at? You know, so I'm looking, I got my binoculars, I'm looking over on the snowy hillside, and I'm looking, and I pull my binoculars down, and he's literally 8 yards in front of me, laying away from me, but he's got his head propped up on a log. And I'm like, I immediately just froze, and I started, you know, breathing real hard, and I'm like, okay, is he breathing? So I sat there and watched him probably 15, 20 seconds, and he didn't take a breath.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so I went to step off to the side, and when I did, it must have brought life back into him. Up he come, he got about 3/4 of the way up,
Whoa.
And he collapsed. Yeah, so it scared me. You know, and I'm like, okay, I don't want this deer to get away. So I'm like trying to fondle for my release, you know, which is in my pocket. And I'm like, okay, you know, I used to shoot pro fingers. So I'm like, he's only 8 yards. I can shoot him with my fingers.
Yeah.
So I immediately pulled my bow back. And the first shot went kind of forward. And I was like, okay, that one's not really a kill shot. So I put another one in him, and he expired right there. And I mean, it was just celebration all over.
Wow. No kidding. So from beginning to end, how many years of a relationship did you have with this buck?
I had 2 years with this buck. At the end of the first year in 2012, he actually got shot through his front shoulders, up by his shoulder blades. And on your Facebook website, I actually put a picture of him in 2012 where he got shot. And he never had no scar. He never had nothing, because that's the first thing I look for. You know, after I shot him, I'm like, you know, where's these scars at? Because I want to see how close it was to, you know, someone killing him. And I could not find no scars whatsoever.
Interesting. But you could see it. You could see it up close?
Yes. I mean, well, not up close. I mean, I got pictures of him with his head down, and I mean, literally went right through his front shoulder blades. You know, from one side to the other. I don't know if it was an archery wound or, you know, muzzleloader. I have no clue what it was.
Interesting. So he had been shot before, and there was evidence on when you harvested him of something.
There was no evidence when I harvested him of any scar or anything where he got shot.
Okay, gotcha. So there was a rumor that he'd been shot, or how did we determine that?
No, I got got pictures of him.
Interesting.
And at the end of 2012, first part of 13, I was getting pictures of him, and I got pictures of him every day. I mean, I got so much video and so much pictures of this deer. I mean, it's just unreal. And, and then when I saw him, because he disappeared in 2012, just like he did in 2013.
Yeah.
But he only disappeared roughly two and a half weeks then, but he come right back in the area.
Gotcha.
In 2013, he left for 5.5 weeks.
Gotcha. So he kept coming back to his home territory.
Correct. Yep.
Interesting.
Yep. And like I said, this area is just a real small area, and that he just travels, basically across the road into town and back he comes.
Gotcha.
So.
And has that been? Have you seen this occur in this area with these other bucks too, or is this just something unique for this deer?
Actually, it occurs with all these bucks because where he went, where another buddy of mine is a teacher, which is 3/4 mile the other way, is towards town. He saw every buck that I had on camera.
Okay.
So they travel up that way to the does, and then, like I said, they kind of go down into town, and then they circle right back around.
Interesting. So they kind of have a routine that you've patterned over the years.
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, tell us just a little bit about your deer setup or your hunting setup. What do you use for like scent control and your bow and your arrows, and how do you prep yourself for the day of a good hunting experience?
I'm a firm believer in scent control. You see all these, and I'm from the sticks, and I see all these hillbillies and everything. They go out in camo, jeans, or just and kill big deer. I'm a firm believer. I do it from the beginning. I throw my towel in scent control, and first scent or whatever in the dryer. So I start off with doing scent-free bath and scent-free drying off with a towel. Then I go into, I don't get dressed until I get out there. I get out of the car, I spray down, I put my scent lock suit on, I use scent blocker.
Yep.
And from there I walk back, which is a short walk back to my stand. And sometimes I hunt the food plot, which I got a lock on. And then sometimes I just use the climber, and, I can go in between the two places that I feed, which is only about 60, 70 yards away from each other. Then, but my setup, I shoot, like I said, I shoot all year. I go right in from competitive shooting, right into hunting setup. Like I said, I shoot for Matthews. Last year, I used a MR7, 64 pounds. I shoot for Carbon Express. So I shoot the Maximum Blue Streaks 250s. I shoot for Rage. So I use the hypodermic needle, to kill him with. And it's just a pretty much lethal combination. I do all my bow setups myself, work on a lot of other people's stuff, and, I make strings and everything. So I'm pretty prepared once I get into the woods. And, I know that, some people will not make a shot after 25 or 30 yards, they'll pass. And I'm pretty confident up to, 50, 60 yards out there that, I'm going to make a good shot and a lethal shot.
Gotcha.
I'm not, unless there's a lot of brush around, and I won't make that shot. It's got to be a good shot before I make it. Gotcha.
So you'll be patient for that right shot. Interesting.
Yes. Oh,
How about your boots? Are your boots rubber?
Yes, I use rubber boots.
Okay.
Yep. I'm a firm believer in rubber. Like I said, a lot of people just throw on a pair of boots and go, and I keep everything in a scent lock, bag, and
gotcha.
I go from there. I shoot for Scott and CVE, so I shoot, shoot their sight and shoot their release and everything. I'm pretty confident in my equipment.
How often do you practice?
I usually practice about every day.
Every day?
Every day, yep. Every day I go out in my backyard, and, I got a 4x4 target back there, and, I'll shoot at that. And I got a Glendale buck. When I go to put my practice broadheads on, I'll shoot at that. And I'll usually shoot anywhere between, 40 to 60 arrows a day. And, sometimes, due to, home life and everything, I don't get to, but for the most part, I like to get out there at least once a day and shoot a little bit. If not, I'm in my garage making strings or, tinkering around.
Gotcha. And how many arrows do you take with you when you go to shoot the 60 arrows a day?
I usually have 5 or 6 that I practice with, and then I usually have I have an arrow quiver of 5 that I keep off to the side, and I'll shoot those 1 or 2 times and make sure they're hitting the same as my practice arrows.
Yep.
And that's how I do that.
So you do somewhere between 6 and 12 rounds of 5 arrows each, thereabouts.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep, and that's about all you need, and it'll keep your and I like to shoot longer distances.
Yeah.
Between 50 and 60 yards. When I'm practicing, because it makes those 20 to 30 yard shots even more better.
Right, a little more simple. If you had one tip to leave with the community of the Big Buck Registry, what would it be to make you a better hunter?
Prepare. I mean, don't just go out there and think that you're going to luck. And some people do luck into, find a deer and everything like that. But, I feel that the more preparation you have, the better your statistics is of killing a big deer. Because once you screw it up, like I said, usually you don't have a second opportunity at that big buck.
Right. Very cool. Well, Dave, thanks for spending a few minutes and telling us the story behind this fantastic deer. Did you give the deer a name?
No, I really didn't. A buddy of mine, give me a name for it, because I had so much fits with it, and I really can't say what he said it was, but I just but I never really give it a name. It was just Big Boy, basically is all I ever called him. Big Boy.
All right. Well, excellent. We'll use Big Boy from now on.
But like I said, once I killed him, and I had a tremendous taxidermist, Eastside Taxidermy in Lima, Ohio, and he's a really good friend of mine. He was with me in 2009 and 2010 when I shot a 218-inch buck and never recovered him. And he's the one that mounted it for me, and he just did a tremendous job and put it, like he was sleeping, like I told him the whole story and how he was just laying there and with his head propped up and everything, and he just went with it, So he did a half body and put it on a pedestal, and that pedestal kind of rotates around, and he put my picture on the back of it, and
right.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it's a great mount. Really enjoyed seeing the pictures, and we're going to call it Thompson's Big Boy. How about that? And
that sounds good.
If you could, just I'll let you give a little promotion out to all your sponsors, so that I'm sure they'll like to hear this whole interview. So why don't you give just a quick rundown of your sponsors?
I'd like to thank Matthews, Lancaster Archery, Carbon Express, Boning Banes, Alpine Optics, Scott and CBE for all they do for me. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. Limb Saber's another one that I have that does a lot for me, and I just want to say thanks to all of them.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure that you get a copy of this and send them each a copy so they can get it onto their respective websites so that they can hear the story behind Thompson's Big Boy as well.
Okay, I appreciate everything.
All right, excellent, Dave. Thanks again, and we'll send you some links as soon as it's out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, take care.
All right, bye.